Yo, yo, yo. Hey guys, welcome back to another amazing edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. Have you ever had a team member who you really like, or maybe you don't like them, and you have to have this difficult conversation about underperformance? Do you struggle with that? I do. That's one of the hardest conversations ever. And the ins and outs of what you can and can't say in HR are more complex than ever. That's why I invited our good friend, Alan Twigg, back, who's an expert on all of this, on how to deal with this, how to handle difficult conversations with underperforming team members. So here it is. Please listen up. Hope you guys enjoy this. And we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast, where our jam around here is to bring the best thinkers in all of dentistry to help you improve your practice and your life. And if you're a dentist, have you ever been in this situation where you have this team member and you're not ready to part ways, but you got to have a conversation with them, and you're dreading the conversation and you don't know what to do? Well, today we brought on our good friend Alan Twigg from Bent Ericksen to coach us through this. Alan, thanks for being back, brother. I always appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here, Kirk. And as always, love talking about HR.
Yeah. Now, if you don't know who Alan is, he's a regular guest. And the reason I love Alan, number one, he's a great guy. Number two, they have an awesome company. Number three, all the things that he's an expert at, I am terrible at, like having these difficult conversations, compliance, like all the work labor details. I'm the worst at it. And that's why I always ask him, like, what do we do? And so, Alan, thanks for being back, buddy. Like, I always want to start super high level. Okay. Let's talk about why this subject is so important first.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously we're in a tight labor market. And so we need to make sure that we have the best people on our team. And as the leader, we got to do a really good job of keeping our team humming along. Part of that is making sure that we are optimizing the current team. And what that means especially is if we have someone who's not performing at a high level, we've got to address that. And I know I'm anti-conflict. I know a lot of dentists are anti-conflict, and it's always tempting to just kind of sweep it under the rug and hope it'll get better, or maybe it's not that big of a deal. Maybe I don't need to say something and all that. The challenge with this is we've got to address it, because the thing that we always have to keep in mind is there's that one employee who's not quite performing very well, but then we've got all of our other employees who are performing really well. And if we let this person slide with mediocre performance, it tells the other employees that they don't matter, their hard work doesn't matter. And so we've got to address that with the bad employees, or the employees who are maybe not bad is the right word, but just someone who's not performing very well. And so we need to address it. We need to have a really solid team, and we need to be always trying to improve the team that we have, because if we can keep our employees and if we can get them to the level that we need them to be at, then we don't have to go out into this crazy hiring market, try to find someone, because it's a shortage all over the country.
Yeah. And so these are unfortunate. I think it's always good to, point people in the right direction. Hopefully you do a great search process. You have a great culture, then a great onboarding process. And that really lessens this, but this still happens. And so, I'll ask you, like, when do you do this? How do you do this? Give us the framework on this.
Sure. Yeah. So, the scenario here is that you've got someone who's not performing quite at the level they should be at, and you need to address it, but we're not at the level of termination yet. So, it's still kind of early on. We're big fans of just this idea that says, if you see something, say something. So you don't have to wait, a year for the annual performance review. You don't have to make it some big, long, drawn out thing. We're big fans of, if you see someone do something good, say something. If you see them do something bad, say something. Because if you can get ahead of these things, especially early on with new employees, it's not nearly as scary or as, conflict ridden, as emotional, whatever, as you might think it is. Where dentists really get into trouble is when someone is not performing something and they let it go for a year or 2 years or even 3 years. And then they say, okay, yeah, I need to address this. Well, how long has it been going on? Well, it's been going on for 2 years. And it's like, oh my gosh, why didn't you say something 2 years ago? So at a bare minimum, try as best you can to address this stuff early and often. Now, today's conversation is more about saying, okay, we've kind of maybe done some verbal counseling. We've done a little bit of stuff already, but now we need to have a little bit more of a more formal conversation or a little bit more serious conversation. Again, we're not at the termination stage yet. This is not a last chance written warning. We're not suspending someone. This is just kind of saying, okay, look, we really need to address this though. And it's communicating to the employee that it's serious, that it's important, and potentially communicating some consequences as well. And so different ways of thinking about this, we sometimes use the analogy of light corrective action, medium corrective action, heavy corrective action. There's also this classic thing about, is it verbal, is it written? So I'll give you kind of a framework to think about. And this works whether it's light, medium, or heavy. This works whether it's verbal or written. So this framework, we just call it the productive feedback model. There's 5 steps to it. The first step is you want to be real clear about what your expectation is. What is your standard? What's your vision? What is it that you want this person to be doing? The second step is, objectively, what is it that this person is doing? So, for example, we have a really high standard for attendance. We need everyone to be here on time, ready to work. This person is showing up late, and they've shown up late 6 times in the past month. Okay, that's the objective fact. That's step 2. Step 3 is identifying and really making clear that gap, that delta between what our standard is and what this person is actually doing. So again, in this case, we want people to be here on time and show up ready to work, and you're showing up late. Step 4 is the most important step, and this is the step that is often missed. Step 4 is really emphasizing the impact of this person's performance on kind of the bigger picture. So relating it to the impact on patients. If you show up late, it means the patients can't be seen on time. It impacts patient care. If you are showing up late, it means the rest of the team has to pick up the slack, and now the team is impacted. If you are chronically absent, it impacts production, which means everyone doesn't get the bonus that they should be getting. So it's about relating what they're doing to kind of the bigger impact, as opposed to just, you need to show up on time, you're showing up late, and
Right.
leave it at that. Relate it to the impact. That's step 4. Step 5 is kind of bringing it all back around. And that's just emphasizing what the expectation is, what's the standard, and then asking the employee for a commitment to meet the standard. So in a sense, inviting the employee, reminding the employee, in a sense, are you on board? This is what we need from you. And are you on board? Are you going to commit to making changes, the necessary changes to make this work? So that's what we call the 5-step productive feedback model. And again, that works with light corrective action, medium corrective action, heavy. We'll talk a little bit more about heavy in a minute, but that model I think is really nice. And I know, frameworks are fun. Everybody loves an outline. So there's an idea for folks to consider.
See, this is why I love talking to you, because your mind is going in the same direction. I always love an outline. I love a worksheet. I love some type of a system. And when you have a system, I would imagine these 5 steps are all listed out on one sheet because it's all got to be documented somehow. Number 2, as the person who has to communicate this information, I always love to have a written outline in front of me so I don't go off on tangents. From a legal standpoint, you got to have it documented. Now, I want you to go back to number 4. You said that's the most important step, but I feel like you didn't tell us like really why. Go a little bit deeper on why it's important to emphasize the impact of this behavior or the results of the practice.
Yeah, because what the impact is it relates it to the wider employee thing, and it makes it about. It makes it about vision, and I know ACT is huge on vision, the importance of vision. And it also depersonalizes it a little bit, because it's not about me as the employer against you, the employee. And this is all about, I'm a nitpicky employer. I'm just hyper whatever. This is about the bigger picture. It's about the bigger vision. It's about where we are going as a practice, and our big goals around patient care, about having a wonderful place for all of the employees. It's about financial success. It's about that bigger picture thing, and how this person's, what might seem to them as minor little things like, oh, who cares if I show up 10 minutes late, once in a while? What's the big deal? But it's about relating that to the bigger picture. And like I said, it really does kind of depersonalize it a little bit, because it's not just about me. It's not that I'm an OCD annoying employer. It's that we collectively, we have this whole big thing that we are trying to achieve, and we need you and everyone to be a part of that.
Yeah, I love that. And so when you say things like you, or, as you can imagine, those are statements that feel very personal and attacking.
Sure.
And I know where you're going with this, is like, this practice has to maintain, and we often call that a triad, meaning it's me and you talking about the thing that we're going to accomplish together in somewhat of a triangle type situation.
Right.
So well said, buddy. And then number 5, asking for the commitment. Let's give our listeners like some specifics. Like, how would you do that? Okay, so let me just pretend I'm that employee who's not showing up on time. Alan, how are you going to tell me? How are you going to get that commitment from me? I want to hear. I always love a little verbal skills.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say, after we've gone through all the different parts and the impact and everything, I would say, okay, so Kirk, we have this standard here, and we really expect all of our employees to show up on time and be ready and willing and energized and here to work. And so, Kirk, can I count on you to make some adjustments going forward so that you can meet this standard?
So good.
It's an invitation.
Good. I love that.
And it's also, I'm also a huge, huge fan of if-then statements. And this is maybe a little bit more something you would employ kind of in heavier corrective action, or someone that you've already talked to multiple times about something. But that might be something like, if this employment relationship is going to continue, then I need you to show up on time, or I need you to commit to XYZ. So it's this idea of, if this is going to, then this is what I need from you. So those if-then statements, that's just another kind of tactic that can sometimes help and make it just crystal clear. You can definitely employ that one in writing if you're ever sending someone an email, or you're writing, something out on a written form of something. Just that idea of the if-then statement is big.
So well said, buddy. And I'm visualizing this happening. So when you have this situation, you take the team member through these 5 steps. It's probably a worksheet or a framework. You have them sign it. You sign it and date it at the bottom, type of a thing. Keep a record of it. And then what happens next of all the possible scenarios? Coach us through that.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned earlier, this framework can work with verbal or written. And so if it's verbal, it's just verbal. We do recommend kind of making a note somewhere of verbal conversations that you have. So it's not something the employee signs or real formal necessarily, because usually verbal, you're just kind of doing some light stuff. Again, light from the employee's perspective. But it is nice to write that down so that you're not trying to remember, okay, yeah, when did I have that conversation with them? Was it last week? Was it 2 weeks ago? That kind of thing. And so then we can also then start to get into the more heavy corrective action, the more heavy, and that's always written. Heavy corrective action is a little bit more serious, and there's kind of two parts to heavy corrective action, or two main objectives. One is it is about protecting the practice, because if we've gotten to a heavy stage, we've had potentially multiple verbal conversations. We may have had kind of a, this productive, written kind of thing that the employee has maybe signed off on, and it's still not getting better. So we are starting down a path where we may be looking at termination. And if we're looking at termination, it's really important that we have our ducks in a row and we have that documentation laid out, so that if someone were to claim that we fired them for discrimination or we fired them for some other protected class, we have this nice, clear, set of documentation and timeline that says, they were told they had to show up on time, and they read the policy manual and they signed off on it. They were told in the job description, they signed off on that. We did a verbal counseling on this date, a verbal counseling on this date. We did written on this, that whole thing is absolutely critical to protecting the practice. So that's objective number one with this heavy corrective action. Objective number two is there's always a chance we can turn this ship around, right? There's always a chance that maybe this employee, if we get the point across that, hey, you got to fix this, and if you don't, you're going out the door. Sometimes that will have someone go, oh, okay, I get it. I'm on board. I'm gonna change. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to fix this. So those are the two objectives. One is about protecting our practice, and the second is we may still be able to turn this around. So in terms of kind of the anatomy of a heavy counseling memo or a heavy written warning, similar aspects to the productive feedback model, but some little differences. So number one is you obviously have to outline the reason for why we're having this conversation, and that objective thing of, okay, you're showing up late, or your patient reviews are negative, whatever it might be. There needs to be a very clear set of expectations for improvement, meaning I need you to be showing up on time. I need you to stop having negative patient reviews, whatever it is. We need to set that absolute clear improvement expectation. The next step is the one that most people miss, and this is so, so important. And that is you have to warn of potential consequences. Again, it's not enough at this stage to just say, you've been showing up late, you need to not show up late. Or you've been having negative patient reviews, you need to stop having patient reviews. You have to put in a line that basically says, if you do not improve, further disciplinary action up to and including termination may occur. That line is critical, because without that, think about it kind of from, anyone who's got teenagers knows that you got to spell it out real clear, because they'll find the loophole.
Right.
The loophole in this would say, yeah, you told me that I was showing up late, and yeah, you told me that I wasn't supposed to show up late, but you didn't tell me that if I kept showing up late, I was going to be fired tomorrow. Or you didn't tell me that I had to fix this by next week or by next month. There has to be that warning of future consequences. That part is really, really critical. So you've got to have that line, and that should just be a part of every written warning, just as like a standard line that's just always in there.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously signatures. We want the employee to sign it. There can be the option where you can give them a chance to kind of do a rebuttal, and maybe they have some things they want to say back. There's all of that. But again, just to reiterate, what's the reason? What's the expectation for improvement? The warning of potential consequences, and then signing it. So I know I've been babbling.
Okay, again, that was so good. I know if I'm listening to this podcast, I'm like, shoot, I got to go back and listen to exactly what he's. Can you say that again? Because it was so well said. In number 3, the actual verbiage of how you state that.
Yeah. Standard thing would be, in a sense, if you are not improving, or if you do not improve, or if this continues, further disciplinary action up to and including termination may result or will result.
Right. Because in that statement, you're being super specific, but you also leave room for being a little vague. Means
exactly.
I may not fire you, but I can fire you. So I love it.
Exactly.
Absolutely love it.
Yeah. And so I'll share some other tips with this, because in these heavy, counseling sessions, they can go so many different ways, right? The employee might just immediately go, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm going to work on this. They may in these sessions say, well, it's not my fault. It's Joanne's fault because Joanne trained me and Joanne did a bad job of training me. It's not my fault. So that's kind of, blaming someone else. They may say, why are you always picking on me? You never talk to anybody else but me. And so they're playing the victim. They may bring up unrelated issues. They may say, well, yeah, I've been showing up late, but what about, so-and-so who, keeps eating lunch at her desk and you don't ever say anything to her about that. So that's, distracting, bringing up something that's totally unrelated. They may just stand up and walk out and say, I don't want to have this conversation. This is stupid. I'm out of here. All of those things on the part of the employee, those are all just ways of them trying to control the conversation. And this is just one of those things of kind of like basic crowd control, if you will, of just learning as the employer how to kind of bring that conversation around and not letting the person derail it. So with, for example, bringing up some unrelated issue, you can say, I appreciate that. I've made a note of that. I'm happy to talk to you about that. And for the purposes of this conversation, we're here to talk about your attendance. Or you may entertain it a little bit and say, well, okay, let's talk about that for a minute or two. But just so you know, we're going to come back to your attendance because that is the main focus of this conversation. Same thing with blaming others and all that. So there's a little bit of just kind of like basic communication skills and stuff that you can, and folks can practice this. I mean, get your spouse involved, get some of the people involved, just say like, all right, let me practice this with you, try to derail the conversation. Let me practice bringing it around. Another common thing.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No. Well, I was just going to speak on the derailing thing. It's funny you say derailing because I have one child of mine. It's one of my 3 daughters. She is a master at derailing. So when I'm angry, she can get me, she'll ask me questions and I'm like, I don't even know what we're talking about now. And before you know it, I'm like, I didn't even get my point across. And so you do need to stay focused. And there's a couple other things I just wanted to point out that's so good. And if you guys are listening to this, you could hear Alan's voice change. And a lot of these conversations become extremely emotional and you can start to sweat in them as a leader. And the thing I've learned the hard way as a leader is you have to be calm. And what you're offering, Alan, is brilliant because leadership is not about being dynamic or perfect or smart. It's really just about 2 things, being clear and being consistent. So whether you have team members that do well, some of them do well and some of them don't, or all of them don't do well, the more you can be clear with a system like this, and then you can be calm and super consistent, it raises the bar for everyone. And they go, he's not messing around or she's not messing around, right?
Yep, absolutely. Big time. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because tone of voice, how fast or slow you're talking with this. All of that is a big thing. And on that note, one other little tip. This is kind of a classic one, and it's just to say your piece and then stop. And that's another tactic some people will do, is basically just stonewalling, where they'll just sit there in silence and just not say anything and not do anything. And the kind of the game that you play with this is you say your piece. So you say your thing of, okay, you've been showing up late. We've talked about this. This needs to get fixed. If this doesn't, get fixed, I may need to let you go. And then you stop. And there's a pause. And if the employee doesn't say something and, either go down a distraction path or go down an accountability path, the temptation on a lot of managers and owners is to fill that awkward silence. And that's where you can kind of then either dilute your message or derail your message or something, because you may fill in and kind of go, but you have all kinds of other good qualities, and you're a great employee otherwise, and I just know you're going to land on your feet, and I believe in you. And now it's like, well, are we counseling the person? Are we cheerleading them? What are we doing here? And that can also happen too if the person just starts crying in the meeting, and then you're kind of going, oh gosh, no, now they're crying. Now we're just sitting here awkwardly while they cry. And that's when you want to fill it in and say, I'm so sorry about this. You're a really great employee, and, I'm sorry you've been having these problems, but and now it just, it dilutes the message. So that's the game. Say your piece and stop.
I'm laughing because I think you've been hanging out at our office for the last 31 years. The first time I ever let an employee go, it was an hour and a half long conversation, and most of it was compliments. So the danger of this is I'm letting you go, but I'm telling you all these great things about yourself because I'm feeling bad I'm letting you go. And the other thing I was laughing about is like filling space. Oh, I'm the worst at that. I'm like, I've learned, and I still don't do it well. Silence is great. Like, it's great. You don't need, we tell people all the time, try to say more with fewer words. Just say what needs to be said, and then that's it. And so, Alan, that's exactly. So good, buddy.
And that's one of those things too, where the silence is kind of another form of control. And that is just, again, where you can bring it around and a little bit of that crowd management thing. And if someone is sitting there silent, then you can just say, okay, well, if you think of anything you want to say later, that's great. Here's this form. I'd like you to sign it, and then we'll move on from here. Now, the signature thing. People always then ask, okay, well, what if the employee refuses to sign? What if they stand up and say, I'm not signing that, and they walk out? What do you do then? One thing to consider with these heavy conversations is consider having a witness present. And in a lot of small practices, that's not always feasible. But if you have a manager or a team lead or a spouse or somebody that is not kind of right at this person's peer level, somewhere where, someone where it is a little bit different, a little bit above, that can be huge, because then what it looks like on paper is you're saying, we had this conversation, the employee never signed it. So the employee is trying to say, well, I don't know, they never told me about this. I don't remember that conversation. But then there's the witness signature that says, no, this conversation did happen, and this is what was discussed, and so on. There's another trick with this, which is, and I mentioned this earlier, and that's the invitation to have the person submit comments. So, and this is especially true if they say, well, I think this is BS because, so-and-so is always, it's not my fault. And you say, okay, well, that's fine. Go ahead and send me an email, or, put your comments in writing and print it out and, and sign it or something, or send me an email that has all of this outlined in it, and send that to me, by the end of the day tomorrow or something like that. Here's what that does. Especially if the person is kind of going point by point and sort of refuting the things that you have said. Again, we're doing all of this in the protecting ourselves for some future claim. So now the employee, let's say we do fire them and they're claiming something and they're saying, well, I don't remember this conversation ever happening. But now we have this form that we filled out that says we talked to them on this date about this, this, and this. We have a witness signature. And then we have this email from the employee 24 hours later where they're refuting point by point that tells an outside observer that this conversation did happen. So the employee can't claim, well, they never told me any of this. Well, here's this thing that basically says, yeah, you were told this, and you actually got a copy of this form, and that's what you use to do your rebuttal. So there are just little tricks like that in the HR world that you just kind of learn and use and all that.
Alan, this is so good, buddy. So good. I have like 3 questions. Number 1, is there anything else, other considerations when it comes to counseling employees that you're not ready to fire? Any last words you give us?
One little thing I'll bring up, and this is just kind of in line of what we talked about, and it's this idea of everyone thinking about boundaries around just basic communication. And this isn't necessarily related just to counseling sessions, but for example, interrupting you. So you start to talk and they interrupt you. And then you let them finish. You start to say something, they interrupt you again. That's a boundary. And you can again learn this idea of saying, okay, look, if this conversation is going to continue, you need to let me speak. You've interrupted me 4 times in the past 4 minutes. Another thing might be someone who's raising their voice and yelling. And again, that's another one where you can say, look, I understand that you're upset and I need you to lower your voice. We're in the office. We don't want patients to be listening. Some of those boundaries around communication, that's totally fine. And think about that and feel free to employ some stuff. So there's just one other little tip.
Yeah, this is so good, buddy. I have a couple other thoughts, but I don't want to make this a 2-hour thing. So I want people to be able to find out who you are. And, I'm just going to say this. If you're listening to the podcast, Bent Ericksen is a no-brainer. They are the ultimate human resource support crew for any dentist of any style, anywhere, because they've got all of this covered. Another thing too that I love about you is I had a dentist 2 weeks ago just called me with a challenge. Now, they're not a client of yours. I'm just like, Alan, can you help him out? And you're like, absolutely. So I love that. Now, I don't want to just volunteer your services to everybody that aren't clients, but I want you to know that behind these conversations, you're willing to help anybody, just kind of get them pointing in the right direction, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, nobody gets any training in this in dental school. Most office managers have no formal training either. They just kind of rose through the ranks. And so it's one of these things where, I mean, if you only did 1 crown a year and you didn't actually have any formal training in how to do a crown, you watch like some YouTube videos, you're not going to be very good at doing crowns. And it's the same thing with these types of conversations. You're not having these heavy counseling conversations every single day. So it's understandable that you may be kind of uncomfortable doing. You may be kind of nervous. You may not have all of these outlines and scripts and everything. And so we're always happy to help people because, the work environment really should be a good, positive, rewarding experience for everybody. And especially for the owner dentist, where it's like, this is your livelihood, this is your business, this is your dream, this is your calling. It should be a good, positive, overall, for the most part, a good, positive, rewarding experience. And so, we're here to help you navigate these tricky situations, navigate all the complexities of state and federal laws and all that stuff too. And we're just happy to help in this area.
Yeah. And so go a little bit deeper. If I'm a dentist, I don't use you. Like, what specifically do you do? Like, how are you going to help me? What do your services do?
Yeah. So 3 main areas. So one area is HR materials. So we do custom compliant state-specific employee handbooks, job descriptions, all the forms, all these things we've mentioned around counseling memo forms and other documentation. We have all of that. So that's number 1. Number 2 is we keep everything up to date over time. There have been 259 labor law changes in the last 5 years nationwide. So the compliance side of it and staying up to date over time is huge right now. If we were having this conversation 20 years ago, be like, compliance, it's okay, whatever. But now, state labor boards and even at the federal level, it's very, very dynamic. So we keep everything up to date. When things change, we draft new language. Your employee handbook basically stays up to date automatically. And then number 3 is the HR support. And that's kind of what we've been sort of touching on today. It's I've got an employee situation. How do I handle it? It could be wage and hour. It could be termination, pregnancy, difficult employees, hiring, onboarding, all of that HR stuff. We have a team of HR specialists who are available via phone and email to just talk people through this. And it's super easy.
Yeah.
We are very much a support company. And so that's what we do, is kind of those main three things. And it's just all about being in compliance and then having the skills and resources so that you can manage your employees effectively.
Yeah. Great stuff, buddy. I'm always grateful that you're on the podcast, helping us out, giving some great coaching and advice on this. So thank you, buddy, for being on today. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, stick around when we say goodbye to everybody else, but thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show podcast. That was great stuff. This is key stuff. And if you're like me, where you've been clinically diagnosed as a wuss and you need help, like that's the stuff you need. And so I'm here to tell you, like, they're an amazing resource. So I'm going to encourage you to check them out. If you weren't taking notes today, don't worry. We're taking notes for you. You can flip up to the notes wherever you're consuming the podcast, and you can see everything that Alan and I discussed along with his contact information. I'll make it easy for you. You can just click on it. I'll take you right there. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for sharing all the episodes, and we're going to keep bringing it. So until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.